Hey guys, welcome back. It's your favorite Gimple the Limp, and I am here with the next part of Hearts and Minds, Vietnam 1965 to 1975 by Compass Games. Now, if you watch my previous video on the game, I didn't actually start the gameplay itself. I just went over some of the issues that the game itself has and, gave you kind of a heads up before you buy. This is what, the game is. Make sure you watch that if you haven't already. We're going to jump right into the game itself now, okay? Let's see, where do we need to start? Just so you guys know, I decided to take, and I think I mentioned this previously, but I am doing a 1966 campaign. You guys can see it's listed down here. And the scenarios work just a little different in this game than they do in some of the others, in the fact that they're all going to be based basically on the year. You're going to pick the year you want to start, and the cards that are going to be available to you are going to vary depending on when you actually start your campaign. The rulebook did say that 1966 is the easiest place to start. I would have thought it was 1965, but I'm going with the rulebook. It says 66, so we're going with 66. It does have in the rulebook a listing down of where all the different units are going to start. That's what you see. I've got all laid out across the board here. What provinces are going to be owned by each of the different factions. And I mentioned this at the tail end of the other video. I'm going to mention it again because it is a unique sticking point. The red star, or the gold star with the red side, of these flag icons are controlled by the North. The ones that are blank, empty, are controlled by the South, the U.S. Arvin forces, and the ones that have the blue stars have been pacified. Now, pacified is something that you're attempted to do to make the province peaceful and safe. It's varying levels of control, right? It's either the red guys control it, the blue guys control it, or the blue guys really control it. Kind of the way that I'm thinking about it. At the end of a year, you're going to see it when we finish it out this first year, the blue player needs to have so many provinces pacified to keep the South Vietnamese government from collapsing. So it is a goal that they have to think of on top of just fighting the red guys. They do have to worry about pacification on top of that. Now, the way this game operates, again, it's a card-driven game, and you're going to be using your cards. Let me just take one of my random cards here and show you guys. When you're looking at the card, you're looking, it's kind of like the coin games, all right? You're going to get so many actions from the card in the way, think about it. The top left is going to tell you how many resource points that card is giving to you. In the case of this one, this card is giving me 5 resource points to use, and I can store those resource points, which are located here on the map. Each side starts with 4 stored resource points, or SRPs, or you can spend them taking actions. And your actions are going to be things like mobilize a province. So if I mobilize Saigon here, I could take and move the units out of it and have them go around doing other stuff. If they are in attacking range, so in a province with enemies, you can spend a resource point to conduct the attack. So pretty much everything you do in the game is based on those resource points. The blue guys will spend resource points to pacify areas. The red guys will spend resource points to take over areas. It's kind of the card's way of limiting how much you can do. The year itself is going to be a hand of cards for each side, okay? And the way the solitaire game works is each player is going to draw 5 cards. I've got 5 down here for the AI. And after they've played 4 and I've played 4, the year ends. Now there's a little random thing that we'll get into in a sec that tells you how the AI is going to take and draw their cards. And then I'll take and select my cards and perform actions accordingly on what I'm trying to do. Now, there are some special cards, and I'm not going to use those when I'm starting off because I think they're going to add a little bit of nitty-gritty, and I think they come more into play with a 2-player game versus an AI. I'm going to start out with just the base cards themselves and then possibly add those in depending later on. And that's the campaign and the response cards. Now, when it comes to the campaign, they add a lot of different nuance to the game. Those are the ones that I might add in later. The response cards, let me grab those. The response cards, like I was telling you guys in the previous video, you guys can see, has response down here in the bottom. They're going to be used. You can play them for their resource points if you got them in your hand normally for a 2-player game, right? Or you can play them, obviously, in response to something your opponent's doing. Now, the problem with that comes into the fact that the AI can't play a response card in response to something I'm doing. So the system they came up with is prior to any battle, both sides will draw 2 of their response cards and put them into the game. And if it randomly select one of them, and if it affects it, that's when you're going to take and bring it in. It just seems kind of fiddly to me. I don't know off the top of my head whether or not I think that's really going to add a lot to the solitaire play. I think the AI system should be best left to just fend on its own, using its resource points just the same way I am. And it's going to make it fiddly for combat. And I'm trying to avoid that, especially when you're playing a game solitaire like this and you're controlling both sides. There's already everything for one person to keep track of, and always having to draw 4 cards and determine which of the 4 cards are getting played for each side when you're taking and conducting a combat, and you're going to have to do that each time, seems, like I said, overly fiddly, because you're going to take of the 8 cards that you have, your 8 response cards, and shuffle them back up each time, put them to the side, and you're going to do that prior to each battle. It really seems like something that will add a lot of just fiddly crap to deal with, and possibly not enough to the game. So I'm going to leave them out to start with. If after playing it a little bit, I think that the combat's a little slow or sluggish, or it's not exciting enough, I might try throwing them back in and see how it plays out. But I want to see how the basic combat plays without a guaranteed response card with each combat that we have. So, and just to give you guys an example, these are some of the special cards I was talking about, the campaign cards. The Grand Campaign are only held by the North. The South doesn't have any of that. And both sides have just regular campaign cards. But you can see the Grand Campaigns are different, obviously. I'll read this one out a little bit for you. This card costs 6 stored resource points to play. Play on your first turn, only in 68 to 70. Play 9 resource points. You may not play SRPs for actions. See campaigns for special rules. Basically, you guys can see it adds a lot of other crap going on. So that's why I'm going to leave the campaign cards out for now and just let you guys see the base game itself, the base cards being used with the AI system back and forth, and see how that goes. And one more thing, like I pointed out previously, the big dice are just not useful. They're not, what's the word I'm thinking of? They're not easy to use. I'm having a brain fart for the game. So I am using my little custom gravity dice. Instead, they're red and blue, so they'll work out just fine for us. And I got a little dice tower here we'll throw in when we need to. Now, when we're playing the solitaire game, we're going to take and start with the red side. And the way it's going to work is you're going to draw 2 cards off the top of the AI's deck of the 5 cards that they have in their hand, all right? So we each drew 5 cards, and we're each going to play 4 cards back and forth. Red's going to go, then me, then them, then back and forth. We're going to take and draw. Here's their little 5-card hand. Already got it shuffled up. We're going to draw 2 cards. We got 1. Now, since this is a 2, I can almost guarantee you this one's going to be higher, and you're going to pick the higher of the 2, and you're going to play that card, and then the one that wasn't played will go back on the top, and you're going to repeat that for their next turn, and you're going to keep doing that, drawing 2, playing the highest, and you're going to use that AI system. So let's draw our next card, which of course is a 2. In a situation like this, though, where you do tie, you're going to take the second card drawn. So in this circumstance, this is the card they're going to play, AK-47. So let's set that down for a sec. We'll take Noi Jane it gets put back on top. And for the next turn, we'll draw again Hanoi Jane that's on the top and the card beneath that and play the highest. Okay, so here is our card that we're playing for the AI. You can see it's only got 2 resource points, but it does have an event which the AI can and more than likely will play. Gain 1 SRP immediately for every allied unit you kill and every R result you inflict on battles this turn. So this is an ongoing effect for this turn, but unfortunately for them, they have to conduct some losses, and a lot of their units really aren't in a place to conduct attacks just yet. So let's take and set this down. Remember when we talked about it? Here is my little scanned player aid from out of the Solitaire rulebook. And this is going to tell you what the AI is going to do. Basically, you're looking for odd or even on what's going on. Now, this top part references the Grand Campaign and the campaign cards. Again, we're not dealing with those just yet. We're just dealing with the regular cards. But this part right here, if North Vietnam contains any units, the first RP is always spent to move those units, roll a die. Okay, up here at the top of the board, and someone actually mentioned this, I wanted to take and address it. They were talking about how it'd be easier if I had the board turned the other way or the camera turned the other way. Unfortunately, with the way the camera films in widescreen like this, if I turn the board each side of the screen, you'd have like this much black on each side of the screen, and the center would be a lot smaller, and it'd be harder for you guys to see. It's just the way the camera films. So I'm doing the best I can with it turned sideways so you guys can get a better view this way. But that up there at the top, that little orange province area, that represents all of North Vietnam, right? They have more than one province, but it's just not represented on the board like it is here for the South Vietnamese, where it's got all these different little provinces. So normally you can only have so many units in a province. That's the only spot on the map where you can kind of overstack. Usually it's 4 combat units and then like 1 each of all the special units like tanks and artillery and yada yada, all the other type stuff that you can have. They can have as much as they want in that province because that's where basically all their units are going to start. But you want to move those units down and get them to attack, get them to move on and start doing stuff. So that's what this is referencing, is if there's any units there, before they do anything else on the board, they're going to take and move those units. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll and we're looking for even or odd. If it's even, they're going to be moving, I think, what is it called? Quang Tri. I'm going to butcher these words. I'm telling you now. Just deal with it. Basically, they're going to move into this first province right up there at the north. If it's not even, they're going to take and move down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which is this dotted line running along the side of South Vietnam here. Think of that as like your, what's the word I'm looking for? As your strategic movement in games like this. They can move very far down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, farther than they can just moving through the hostile areas here in South Vietnam. They can get all the way down here to the bottom. So let's take and roll for them real quick and see where they're going to go. Okay, I got my die here. We're going to roll it real quick. Even, we're going down Quang Tri. Odd, we are going down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Oh, there we go. We got even, so they are going into Quang Tri. Now, what this says is you're going to spend 1 movement point and you're going to move up to 4 infantry units. I think they have 9 that start there, so they're going to move all 4. And 1 support unit. I don't think they've got any support units into Quang Tri. Excess units will move down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Roll a die to see how many provinces they move. When movement causes overstacking, move the unit 1 additional province. If no units, then you go to 1. Okay, so let's take the first 4 here. Wow. Sorry if you guys are seeing my fat head on screen. I'm having to stretch. All right, we got 4 of our units here. And I don't know if I've been able to find the images yet. If I haven't, I'll be zooming in onto the board to make it easier for you guys to see. I'm hoping I can track down some of the images. 4 of these infantry, they're coming right here. And what they're talking about rolling the die is the rest of those guys that are located up there. They're going to come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and you're going to count on the die how far they go based on the provinces. So let's take and roll real quick and see how far they get. They got 4. So if we count it out, 1, 2, 3, 4, they're going to end up in, what is this? Atapu. Now, unfortunately, with that is 5 units stacked. They can't have that many. They can only have 4 infantry there. So 1 more province, just like it said on the thing. Bam, so we've got 1 unit. We pushed him 1 farther into Ratakiri. So we'll call it, Ratakiri. I'm hoping I'm not butchering this stuff too bad. Okay, but now looking onto our card, we've already spent 1 of our points. So we have 1 more left to spend. Let's take and look real quick at our chart. We've done our movement, and you see this doesn't have a number next to it. This is the first thing that you go to normally, and you start here if you don't have any units in North Vietnam. Now we don't have any units in North Vietnam, so we start here next time. You can see if it's even, they're going to bank 1 resource point. So if they roll even, their last resource point is getting banked, which is fine. And then they're going to conduct a free VC raid. This, from what I've been reading on it, seems to give the AI like free stuff to do. And I guess that's kind of even it up a little bit, since it is the AI versus you, and the AI can only do so good when you can plot out strategies. A VC raid against a random US or ARVN force in South Vietnam within reach. And for the VC, which are these gray looking guys here, to attack someone, to be within reach, they have to be adjacent. But you don't move them into the province, you leave them where they are. It's considered like a raid. So they're taking and going in and coming back out. That is for the evens. For the odds, you spend 1 resource point to move the largest bot unit concentration to attack the weakest blue concentration of units within reach. If necessary, use a bot decision, which is that flow chart that I showed you guys. But honestly, I'm trying not to hate on this game because I really want to like this game. The flow chart didn't seem all that good to me and easy to follow. So I'm thinking I'm going to just make some judgment calls on stuff like this and just use this to randomize the decisions the AI makes. So let's take and roll this and see if we get even or odd and see what the choice the AI is going to make. Remember, even is going to be a raid and odd is going to be an attack. So let's see what we get here. We got a 4, so we got even. So they are going to conduct a raid and they're going to bank their other resource point against us. So we're going to take and drop them down. They're going to have 5 resource points located over here on the side of the board. And now, let's see here. One of the things I really do like about this game is, where is my chart here? Is it only on the board? I think they've got it here as well. Where is it? The evasion table's here. Reinforcement, VMization, victory goals, sequence of play, battle sequence, battle table. Oh, I guess they only do have the raid table. There's a ambush raid table that's located right here on the board, but most of the tables they do have on the player aid and on the board. So you've got like your battle table here, you've got your evasion table, you've got your ambush raid table, you've got, which one is this? The bomber ground attack table located over here, and interface summary, sequence of play over there. Like I said, I really think that's a good idea, having that on both sides of the board for each side. Now, let's see where would be a good spot for them to conduct a raid. And this is one of those things where I'm not going to use a bot decision to make it. I think I'm going to make a judgment call for them, because I just think it'll be easier for me to do that versus trying to walk through that flow chart. So we've got VC here. They can raid here into Saigon, or they can raid into the Long Con Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to laugh at some of these names. It's just going to happen. We've got VC here. They can raid into Darlac. VC there can raid into Darlac. Now, I haven't gone into this too much yet, but just to show you guys very quickly, the VC have combat sides like this, but they also have, see if I can find one in here, they have sides like this that say bad intel. And there's actually a chart that you'll roll on for the bad intel events. But it behooves the VC player to keep these things down and just treat them like, you know, unknown VC. They can still conduct raids and do stuff like that. But when you have to reveal it and it's a bad intel, generally the rulebook says that that's not good for the North. So you want to avoid those. When it comes to playing solitaire like this, your VC are going to stay down pretty much all the time unless they're directly involved in attack. All right. So when they're conducting this raid, we don't have to worry about flipping them over. Like I said, we got two possible choices here. We got a choice there, or we've got Bindin up there where they could raid. So they've got a good amount of spots that they could raid. Since they're coming down from the north, I think their better chance would be to take and try to raid here in Darlac. And it doesn't really matter who I say, but for game purposes, actually it does matter, because if they roll horribly, they could lose a guy. So we'll take and say it's this VC is raiding into Darlac. We'll take and move this up. And looking at our ambush raid table, I'll try to zoom the camera down so you guys can see that as well as possible. If not, I'll see if I can find an image of it and put it on the screen for you guys. But the raid table is going to be determined by what's going on. If it's VC, or if it's a raid, or how many VC are raiding. Same way it's kind of like evading or combat. It depends on like the unit strengths and how many are involved. When you're doing the raid, this is just showing 5 or 6 means someone gets killed. Right? It doesn't even have the A result, which is where the attacker gets killed. Blank is nothing, so all of these 1 through 4 is blank. So we're just looking for a 5 or 6 for them to get a kill. So basically, it's a free action that they can attempt to kill one of my guys. Let's hope that they don't get a 5 or 6, but this will probably be one of those where I roll high. Watch it. No, we got a 4. Close. So that is a whiff. All right. So that actually concludes the first VC turn, and that ended kind of quick because they did get a small point card. Now, I know I've been talking through this, but you can see why 1 year is only a handful of cards back and forth instead of, you know, like when I was first thinking about it, I was like, wow, really? I would figure you would draw a whole bunch of cards, but there's actually a lot of stuff you can do with your cards during your turn, so it takes a little while to play through a year. Give me a sec. I'm going to look at my cards, pick something to do, and I'll be right back. Okay, so this is the card I ended up choosing, and I chose kind of like a middle-of-the-road card because I didn't... There's some other cards in my hand, which we'll show later, that I'm thinking about using to some positive effect, but I don't want to use them just yet, so I wanted to take and get a couple other things going first. And what I'm thinking is I'm just going to use these for what they are. And I know I want to get some points tucked away, right? But, I don't know if I got enough. Well, I mean, that's free. But I want to pull him down. I might have to wait until my next round to do that. We'll see. Okay. I'm wanting to attack down here in Kinhoa. I've got a large set of units here in Saigon. I've got a large set of units right next to Saigon, both ready to conduct some attacks. But my Blue Water Navy is way up here, and they have something that's called a reaction. The reaction is that number listed down there bottom right. They can react up to 8 provinces away. They're going to be all along this coast here. So I'm thinking I want to take and get them closer so they can react up north and down south, because right now they're so far up there. But I have to pay a resource point to activate them to move them. So yeah, I think I'm going to do that anyway because I just don't like the position they start in because they're too far down. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, they could react all the way to here, but they need to be 1, 2, 3 provinces closer to help with this attack. So I could move them 3 provinces closer, and they should be able to cover north and south that way. So yeah, we'll actually go 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we'll go 4, just to be sure. So I'm going to spend 1 resource point to move my Blue Water Navy towards the center so they can take and react in each direction. You'll see what I mean by that. But actually, it really doesn't matter because once I react with them, they're going to pull down all the way to this spot anyway. But if I leave them in the center, depending on what happens, I might get attacked because I'm going to move around some units. So I might possibly want to react them back up north. So yeah, I'm still going to do that. It's probably a bad idea. I probably got bad strategy going on. But I'm moving them towards the center. We're going to spend the point to do it. That way I can react south or north, depending on what the enemy does. And if I don't need to move them north on the enemy's next turn, I'll take and bring them down south for Kin Hua. All right, so that's 1 point. Yeah, I should be able to do all this first. Okay, something else you can do is for a free action, you can take and do a bombing run. All right, that's what these bomb counters are for. And you can place them in any province in South Vietnam and conduct a bombing attack. I think I'm going to conduct a bombing attack. Now, these things don't refuel short of an event card until the end of the year. So once I spend it, it's spent. But I've got a stack of units here that I want to clear out. And if I get them cleared out, then I can just worry about the northern units. So I think I'm going to focus a bombing attack on this group of guys. Now, the bombing attack is dependent on how many units are here. You guys can see there are 5 units here, 3 regular NVAs, and then 1 veteran. It's flipped over towards the darker side so you can tell it's veteran. Plus they have some artillery. So let's take and set them back down. Now looking at the chart on the table, when you're conducting a bombing attack, it's going to depend on how many units are in the hex on what you're going to roll. Unfortunately, since there are only 5 units in the hex, it doesn't go quite as high as it could. If I got up to 6 or 7 units in the hex, you can take out as many as 2 units, which is big in this game, in 1 bombing attack. But we'll take and get these guys. Let's take and roll off on it real quick and see what we get here. Hopefully we can get at least 1 just flat knocked out of the fight. All right, let's take and roll for it. Got a 5, which is 5 units. 5, that's 1. So, and that's close. That's the one time you didn't want a 6. If I got a 6 actually would have been blank. So that is going to kill 1 of their infantry right off the bat. We'll put it here in the dead pool. Yay. All right, that leaves me 2 resource points left. I'm thinking I take and move this force down to Kin Hoa and go ahead and attack as 1 point, I'll mobilize them. 2nd point, I'll conduct the attack in Kin Hoa with that group. That'll spend the rest of my stuff. Or I can store a point because I want to store a point for each card that I play because at the end of the year, you have to take and spend some points to keep the governments from collapsing. And it's not just South Vietnam. You've got Laos and Cambodia as well to worry about possibly surrendering or collapsing. And I don't want them to collapse either. I'm trying to decide, should I wait or should I go ahead and conduct the attack? And the thing is, I don't know the game well enough to make a judgment call on that. So you guys are going to watch me make mistakes as we go. I never played the previous versions of this game. All right. Let's see. How many of these guys are Arvin? It looks like it's 2 Arvin, 2 US, and 1 Arvin artillery. Now what you're going to be doing is you're going to add the factors up. Let me show you guys this real quick. When you're conducting combat, you basically add all your factors, the enemy adds all their factors, and it's considered a simultaneous attack. So for this attack, I would have 4, so 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus another 1 there, so that's 5, 7. 7 factors plus the 2 I'm going to bring in up here with that Blue Water Navy. That's actually a fairly substantial attack, and I just took out one of their factors. So let's screw it. Let's take and do it. We're going to spend 2 points. You only live once. Let's see how it goes. Actually, the Arvin have a special thing. When they take and move, you have to roll to see how far they move. So I need to get at least a 2 or higher to make sure they can make it down to Kenhoa. I got the 2. Wow, that was close. Okay, so 1, 2, they're going to move here. I'm going to activate the province with 1 to move them all. They're down there. That's 1 resource point. Okay, I'm going to spend the next resource point to conduct combat operations here in Kenhoa. And I'm going to have the Blue Water Navy react their distance, which is up to 8 provinces down here. So that gives me another plus 2 onto my combat factor. So that should be 9, right? That's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, that gives me 9 combat factors. We're going to look at the combat table. It's zoomed in here so you guys can see it. You can see on a 7 to 9 is right there. But this is going to be plus a D6, right? So you're going to sum the total of the combat factors. Blue rolls blue columns, red, red, blah, blah, blah. Oh yeah, it was talking about the fire bases or attack and stuff like that. You can see on Saigon, it's actually got a built-in fire base, so it gets a native modifier. That's not going to apply for our combat here. So I have a total of 9 plus my D6. They're going to have a total of 1, 2, 4, 6. They're going to have 6 plus their D6. And then we're going to consult each one of the columns, and the result on the right is going to be what happens, what each side suffers. All right, so let's roll for it real quick. Blue, obviously, for blue force. Red, obviously, for red force. And see what we get. Blue got a 5. Red got a 2. That gives me a total of 14 for blue. So 14 puts us to 2R. Ooh, that is big. That is 2 losses plus a either resource point or a loss. And actually, let me check real quick because I wanted to see if the AI has something listed down for what it wants to do with ours. Okay, so in digging through the rulebook, it was talking about the only thing I could find in the solitary rulebook had to do with evasions, which we haven't seen an evasion yet. We'll possibly see that in the next turn, but that has to do with units pulling back from combat. I didn't even worry about it for this group since this was a large group that was here and they probably wanted to get stuck in with the Americans. Small like VC single counters and stuff, they're going to try to evade if they're going to get swarmed by large amounts of troops. The part of the evasion, though, in the battle results in the solitary book said in a situation, if it's a red bot and it has an R, they'll lose the unit instead. And if it's a blue bot, they'll lose the SRP instead. I'm going to go with that for now. I think I'm going to probably fluctuate it later, maybe roll a die. But it's the only thing I could find that says anything. So when we have a battle result of 14, which is what I got, it's 2R. They're, instead of losing a resource point, they're going to lose a unit. Again, going by the rulebook. So they're going to lose 3 units. And I'll tell you what, we'll keep their veteran unit there instead of losing that. So we'll put these guys in the loss pile, but they do attack back at full strength. So that's, what is that? 2, 4, 6 plus that is 8. So looking on the red column for 8, that's going to be 7 to 10. It's going to cause 1 casualty to the U.S. forces. And who do you want to lose? Now I think we'll lose an Arvin because those guys are easier to replace than the U.S. forces. Okay, so these are our battle results. Now there is something else that comes into effect, and it's battlefield promotions. and basically one infantry unit for the one surviving infantry unit for every enemy that was in the conflict that survived gets promoted. It sounds a little complicated, but it's not. The enemy had, what was it, 4 units? Yeah, because I bombed one off, so they had 4 units total in this combat. I have, infantry-wise, should be 3 surviving infantry units. One Arvin is already in veteran status. I have 2 U.S. units that aren't veteran. They were considered untried at this point. But there were more enemies involved than I have surviving infantry, so I get to promote all of them to veteran. And, okay. I just noticed that one's actually missing the numbers off of it. Let me take and switch that counter out. Go figure. All right. So this one is now promoted. So I've got 3 veteran units that are now in this zone. So their combat strength, even though they lost a unit, went from a 9 total to an 8 total because those guys got bumped up. And if you add back in the seawater, they're up to a 10. So technically, the blue water, I mean, they're stronger now due to the battlefield promotions than they were before the combat. The only surviving North Vietnamese unit was already a veteran, so there's nothing to promote. And there's no retreats involved with this. The only time you're going to have retreats is if a unit decides to evade or due to like events. So instead of this combat, had the NVA wanted to retreat, evade, they could have. There is an evasion table, but you can only evade a max of 3 units. If you have 4 more units and you want to evade, you can only basically evade those 3, and the 4th has to stay behind. Since they had 4 units and they had good combat strength, it was relatively close on the combat, I just decided not to chance evading them and let them stand and fight, because it could have gone the other way if the dice rolls had gone differently. So we won't worry about that for this one. But you'll see, especially when the VCs start getting attacked, they're going to definitely try to evade. Or if you just, if we conducted an attack against just this veteran unit, right, with this size force, of course, this veteran unit would try to pull back because they're severely outnumbered. More than likely, they'd get crushed. So they would evade at this point. That actually finishes out my card. I did all my actions, mobilized, moved the blue water, and conducted the assault. So that's 3 points, resource points that I spent. And here, I'll set this card over here. And the 1 free bombing run. I do have 1 more bomber left. There's 3 total. In 1966, you only start with 2. I haven't seen any cards in my hand that would take and allow me to refuel the bomber, so I'm probably only going to get 2 bombing runs per year, which is, again, the card play back and forth. So we've each played 1 card. We have 3 more cards left to play, and then it goes to 1967, and we'll do the interphase in between that, which is where you're going to take and tally up the control areas, the pacification areas, see if South Vietnam collapses, or Laos or Cambodia, if they collapse, stuff like that. That's also where you get reinforcements and buyback units to get back into the conflict, and you'll see more units coming down from North Vietnam. You guys will see that once we get past the next set of card plays. I think I'm going to go ahead and call the video here. The next one, part 3, it'll pick up as far as gameplay is concerned, since I've had to explain a lot of stuff as we're going along in this first turn. But now that you guys have seen combat and moving and some of the special units, it'll make it a little bit quicker, so I don't have to explain as much on the following turns. All right, that's going to be it for me. You guys take care. I'll catch you in the next one.